Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DBE show. We have Thomas Koshi and Safal, the co-founders of Flekt, here with us. Before we begin or dive deep into this, let's start with what is Flekt and how did you come about the name of it? Am I even pronouncing it right?
Yes, that's the right way to say it. Flekt. So essentially, salons have mirrors that reflect, and we placed tablet screens in front of salon mirrors that flect. We took away the rebound and just kept it flekt.
Yeah, that's creative. So what's the story of Flekt?
So essentially, we want to have this name Flekt be synonymous with the term salons themselves. So anything that has to do with salons, be it your tech-enabled solutions, staffing requirements, or branding solutions, marketing collateral, whatever it is, at some point or the other, if it's a salon, it has to have a Flekt product.
Let's talk about what inspired you to start Flekt.
For us, Flekt actually started when we noticed a huge opportunity. Right? I think everyone's focused on industries like fintech, edutech, and now obviously quick commerce. But we see a massive blue ocean where there's very limited tech. There's maybe a CRM on one side or a trimmer on the other, right? So a very simple personal story of mine that I think inspired me to get in this space is when I was a child, maybe around 4 or 5 years old, and he's heard the story countless times, right? I used to enjoy going to a salon or a barber shop, right? I used to go with my dad on a weekend, and I think my mom was very keen that I get a haircut every other month. So when I used to go to the barber shop, the stylist there was called Uni Uncle, and that's how we still call him, right? Whenever I go to the salon, I see that he acknowledges me, right? He keeps a little slab for me to and he keeps me seated there. And that's when I started recognizing my individuality, right? Right from a very young age, a barbershop is where a stylist acknowledges you, right? You start being acknowledged, you start having your own sense of individuality. And that gave me a glimpse of what manhood could be or what grooming could imbibe in you, right? It imbibed a sense of confidence, right? How you look and, that relationship that you have with people. I think all this, the roots of it stemmed from that visit to Uni Uncle every other month. And I think that's what inspired us to, that's my personal story of how I ventured into a grooming space.
So if you could describe Flekt in 3 words, what would it be?
So I think in 3 words, how we describe
one-stop solution.
So one-stop solution.
Well, how are you positioning Flekt into this whole grooming and beauty service industry? What's the role of Flekt and how are you positioning it as a startup?
So what we've noticed, as we mentioned earlier, right, there are 2 clear segments. That is the premium segment and the unorganized barbershop segment, right? The needs and the problems of both these segments are, totally polar opposites. So what we noticed is in the premium segment, what we are trying to do is we're trying to help stylists become artists. Right now, they're limited to sales targets. Owners, shove targets on them. They pressurize them like you have to meet your targets. But they're artists. Let them be artists. There's so much tech in every other industry. What's the tech that you've seen in the salon? There's maybe a CRM or a trimmer on the other end, right? So we want to assist stylists to be artists. So we have a simple tool that we cater to them, and it's a simple diagnostic tool that shows your dandruff, your blackheads, your whiteheads, your cuticles, and it helps them easily upsell, right?
Yeah.
It helps in consultation. And on the flip side, in the barbershop segment, what we're trying to do is we're trying to aggregate the space. As I mentioned earlier, there are countless brands or premiums in the premium segment, but there's no. What do you think about in the barbershop segment? There's no singular name. So we want to standardize that experience and maybe create something like an OYO for salons or a cult for salons. That's what we're looking at.
So I wanted to also shed a little light on what are your different roles in the startup ecosystem and how do we go about this dynamic duo for the startup and for Flekt?
All right. So the simplest way to put that is Thomas would be the brain or I'll be the heart. So I always say this also: creativity without direction is just a dream. And whereas just structure alone lacks soul. So it needs both sides of it. A lot of people are blessed with being both, but thankfully we're not in way together. Doesn't mean I'm heartless, just saying it. Doesn't mean he's artist. Doesn't mean I'm stupid, but it works.
So how do you find a great co-founder? I think that's one of the biggest keys to unlocking a great startup journey, right?
I think what works for us personally is the fact that we can separate our work from our life. We've known each other for almost 10 years now, a little over 10 years. So that really helps because we know, like, regardless of what kind of disagreements we have, what kind of pressure we face, we're still separate entities. The company matters first. And because of this separation, this distance, we're able to sit together and attack a problem as a team, as opposed to you do this and this is your problem alone. It's a combined effort. I think that really helps. That separation between our egos, it's diluted enough to know that it's our problem and not your problem.
I think we met in college when we were quite active in this college fests and all of that. So we were in SRM University, Chennai. And we used to engage in so we used to be part of a lot of common events and all of that. And I think once we met, we understood there's a lot of topics. I think the friendship is what laid the foundation first. So we used to talk about everything right from grooming. That was always the ambition. But we used to talk about everything and anything. And we used to talk about, countless topics about space, aliens and all that, right? And that's how the bond developed, right? And I think from there, we just realized that, probably, we can figure out a company since we both have the same passion.
And that's where the aspect of community also surrounds. Like, we realize that how much time we spend with each other having these very engaging conversations. How many people can we draw into such a community? How many people would be like us? So that sense of community, I think every industry is chasing, but this part had it all along, and no one has really capitalized on it or really tried to bring it back. So we're trying to bring that back.
I think that's quite interesting aspect of what you've shared. And how do you go about from being a student to a founder? How was that journey like? Was it like your first term experience? Did you know right off, I want to be a founder for a startup, or did it come along the way with experience?
So for me personally, what happened was, I think, I am a mechatronics engineer by background. And what happened was, right out of college, we were given a task to kind of develop a final year project. We had to deliver a final year project. And, it's the common mumbo jumbo. You have to create an engine or just copy paste or, do something. But we want to do something different. And that's when we found, tapped into the salon space, and we identified why not create an automatic hair cutting machine.
Okay.
As fancy as it sounds, we actually went ahead and thought why not create a prototype. So 3 of us initially started that project, and it was quite an exciting space. So we developed a prototype, we got an investor from Singapore, we created a company. So it was all, very, what would I say, glorifying, right? But when you start the business, when you hit the road, when you try to see how you can commercialize it, right, there was a lot of setbacks, a lot of challenges, right? And I spent my first 2-3 years as a startup founder. And then when I started seeing all my friends, getting promotions and traveling, I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Am I able to kind of, am I doing what I'm meant to do, right? So then I actually took a break. I worked in corporate for a while. I was in Freshworks for a year or two. I was in another company called Ozone Tel. And that is a splendid experience. I think every founder should have a small stint at least, in corporate or a startup, so that you get to experience how a company functions or how a company is structured. So that is definitely enriching. But at the same time, I think after the 3-year period, I'm like, okay, I really want to do what I'm meant to do. And that's how we both, just got back. I was in Chennai, and he used to always, call me and I would say annoy me and tell me that, hey, what are you doing? What is this startup all about? You should just come to Bangalore. And then I think one fine July morning, I just came to Bangalore. I'm like, I'm here. Now it's here. So now what do we do?
I think that is a sign to take your final year project seriously. Yeah.
Yes. Could lead you places.
Well, you mentioned about bringing tech and capitalizing on the beauty industry, right? So what made you first think tech is good for this? What was the first gap that you identified in the salon industry that made you think tech could solve this problem?
Well, the first gap was just boredom. The fact that I was sitting there in a straitjacket in front of a mirror looking at myself and nowhere else to look at, and there's a blade to my throat. I thought, this is a great place to market something. So that's when we initially started. Like, we put in tablet screens in front of the mirrors themselves, and I'll get into that bit later as well. So we thought, okay, wait, let's put a tablet screen here and run advertisements. And perhaps the salon owners themselves could put in their marketing collateral and help advertise what kind of services they've got, what that service looks like, and keep the customer engaged with that space in itself. And then later we figured out, okay, wait, the advertising model is just a byproduct of scale. Like, once you have enough screens is when advertisers would probably want to, come after you and place their advertisements there. So that's one of our first pivots. But yeah, idly just boredom. The fact that there's a space of this sort, an idle time, a lot of space, just time just being spent there, and the fact that no one's really looked into it.
That was actually an insight as well, as in, like, where else does an advertiser or a brand get so much attention?
Yeah.
Right now you have Instagram, you have LinkedIn, right? But there's no other place where you're sitting idly and just staring at yourself, right? That's the best place to capitalize. So we thought that was a great approach. And it did work to a certain extent, but then you need to have a certain density of scale for us to even monetize it to a reasonable scale.
So did Flekt ever have to pivot from its original idea? What triggered that shift?
Absolutely. So, as a company, the whole objective is to survive, right? be consistent, survive. And to survive, you can always, what do you say? You have to innovate, right? Now you have to keep up with the trend. So we understood that the advertising model was a very seasonal model. It wasn't consistent revenue. So then we understood that, okay, to survive as a company, we have to kind of pivot. So we did, again, we did countless surveys, we brainstormed, we had internal discussions, and we came up with multiple iterations, and that kind of helped us reach to where we are, how we kind of segmented the market into two, and tech in the grooming space, in the premium space, and aggregation in the barbershop.
So when you realized a pivot was needed, right? So how did you go about these emotional and strategic challenges that came along with it?
For me personally, it was a lot to take in. But Thomas came into this whole thing with experience behind his belt. Like he's a second-time founder, so he knows pivots are part of the journey. For me, it was like, okay, my first idea is invalidated. So there was a lot of emotional challenges there, where you sort of have to accept, okay, ideas are great, but when it comes to putting it down on paper and making a business out of it, you have to check for key, like, there are factors that you have to consider: willingness to pay, whether it's viable, if there's like, operationally, if it's not sound, if the whole system is not sustainable. All of these things are the realistic aspects. But as a dreamer, sure, like the first idea itself is like, went into the ground. But again, the one saving grace through that whole part was the fact that we didn't exactly fail at it. We realized that there is a bottleneck to the growth because of how we needed density of screens and whatnot to scale that model.
Well, were there financial and operational challenges to this? Do you want to add that dimension to this?
Of course. I think every founder is definitely going to, be faced with setbacks and challenges, right? It's part of the journey, and that's the first thing that you have to come to acceptance into, right? So yeah, obviously there were, because what we did was, I think we just went ahead and, burst 15 lakhs of our savings into buying tabs. And since the advertisement model wasn't working, we're like, hey, what do we do with these resources? So what we did strategically was, how can we optimize on the existing tabs? Is there any add-on that we could include in the existing service to make sure that we can monetize it? Because monetization was, as I mentioned, just seasonal. Now, how do I make it a recurring model so that we can sustain as a company? So that is the approach we took. And I think it's been going so far so good. And we're trying to see how we can scale.
Well, a follow-up question to your answer, right? So how do you balance this resource allocation when you're trying to scale a startup, especially when you're trying to stay lean?
Of course. So see, initially you have to, you have no resources. There aren't any resources that you have, right? You have to gather whatever you have, reach out to anyone willing to help. And that's the sort of resourcefulness you should have as a founder. You should be ready to reach out and ask or seek help, right? So we just leveraged on whatever was available. We reached out to whoever we could. We dug into whatever we had, and step by step we grew from what we had to what we are now.
So in pitching Flekt, what was the biggest resistance that you faced from the salon owners?
One thing that we've noticed, right, as in the industry on a whole definitely wants to adopt new technology, right? Salon owners are obviously excited. But if you think about the functionality or the implementation part of it, right, most of the time the owners are not there at the salon, right? It's either the stylists or the managers who run the show. So even if the owners accept it, which most of them do, right, it's the execution of it, whether the managers or the stylists will use it. Now that's the biggest challenge that we face. Does it trickle down from the management? That is what we have to kind of focus on. Like, is the tool or whatever we're implying to the owner or pitching to the owner, is there efficacy to it at the end of the day? Is it showing results to them? And that I feel is the biggest challenge till date.
Okay, so when you're validating your idea before launching, right, was there a specific framework you used to ensure this was a viable business opportunity?
Of course. So personally, one thing that I've learned along the way, right, again, with my previous experience as engineers or as innovators or as passionate tech enthusiasts, right, what we focus on is creating that wow factor. Like, hey, the product is great. We assume a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if the customer is not willing to pay, right? That's the term that is commonly used. Is there a market for it? Can you commercialize it? There's a beautiful book called, I think, Monetizing Innovation, in which I was introduced to the term called willingness to pay, right? However fancy your product is, right? At the end of the day, if you're not able to monetize it, or if you're not able to make money out of the customer, you don't have a business. So that's one of the things that we make sure to look out for. Is there a willingness to pay from the market? And then we roll out the product. That's how we always go about now iterating.
Now, speaking of scaling, running a marketplace isn't easy. So there are two sides to it, the salons and customers. So which was harder, Which was harder to crack first?
Both came with its set of challenges, right? But one common factor between both of these segments is the fact that the end user is what we need to prioritize. No matter how innovative your solution is, if the end user, likely the stylist in our case, if they're not able to adapt this into their existing scope of work, they're not going to use it. And if they don't use it, they're not going to see the results. So that's our first judgment, right? Like, can the stylist learn this? So essentially, teachability and how easy and how simple the systems that we develop. Is it for the user to use? Then that's our first go-to.
Education is definitely a major factor in them, adapting to it. Because I think there was one argument by one of the owners where when they introduced trimmers, that also was being a challenge because they were not used to trimmers. They just wanted to use a scissor. We were so confused. Like, a trimmer is a necessity for why would stylists, but they're not comfortable with it, right? So it has to be as simple as possible for stylists to use so that it can show the effect downstream as well.
Now, speaking of early adopters, right? How did you find your first 100 users? Like, did you have a particular strategy, or how did you go about it?
So the first few months, what we did was obviously door to door, right? As in being founders, we went and we had to take up, the pulse of the market. We obviously spent countless hours sitting in the salon, observing how, if the stylists are using it or how the consumers are reacting to it. And we did get a solid green flag from most of these observations. But how we went about it is we realized that, hey, when we knock on doors, there's only a certain scale that you can achieve, right? So let's say if I approach 5 salons a day and I have a conversion of, let's say, 20%, that's one salon a day, right? Am I able to, how do I scale faster, right? So then when we started thinking on that scale, we had two approaches. One is, why not partner with existing distributors or existing software providers, right? So we have a very good close alliance of us who's a distributor of various products in the market, like these shampoos, conditioners, or even salon furniture. So incentivize them, provide them commissions, and they'll open doors for us. That's one strategy. Another strategy is focus on brands that have multiple outlets, right? Probably the sales cycle is going to be longer. But that's a top-down approach where we focus on the major franchisee, and then they open doors to a lot more salons across the city.
Now, what's the biggest mistake that you think marketplace startups make when they're trying to scale, and how did Flekt avoid it? And what were your key learnings from your first 100 users?
I think the first mistake when building marketplace is driving deep discounts. Like, if you get associated with just discounts, and the moment the discounts run dry, they're off the marketplace. They're not going to come back to you. I think that's one of our key learnings.
Discounts alone is not going to, just cut it. It's just maybe an acquisition strategy, but does it necessarily promise retention? Does it promise usage of it? Is not guaranteed. So you have to calculate parameters. You need to have north metrics. You need to have, trackability of whether they're using it, whether there's efficacy on or implementation of it. So that's the only way to go about it, is what we feel.
How did you go about these particular unit economics, right? Be it the customer acquisition cost or the lifetime value. How did you particularly go about it? Did you have a strategy in place, and what was your key insights from the process?
Our understanding of business is very simple. We just want to be like, hey, if my cost of goods is 5 rupees, I have to pitch it for 10 rupees, right? Always have a profit. It shouldn't be that my cost of goods is 5 and then I have expenses of another 15 and then another 20 rupees and then I sell it for 10 rupees. So let's say I have a burn of 50 rupees and I'm selling it for 10 rupees. Then it's obviously going to damage your business in the long run. Unless you're VC backed or unless you have the perfect PMF, it's not going to work. So we wanted to survive or grow sustainably since day one. And we used to look at it like, okay, if I put 1 rupee here, can I get 10 rupees back? And that's how it's always been for us. So yeah, we look at it in that way, and we assume the lifetime value, at least in the first segment that we're talking about, the premium segment, to be at least minimum of 12 to 18 months, and we break even in month 2 or 3 easily. So that's how we go about it.
So did that approach or that way of tackling unit economics evolve over time? Were there key learnings or key points where you felt, hey, now this is something I could improve from where I initially began with how I approached this?
Obviously, yeah. So there are, once you have quantities, right, that's when your cost also reduce. So that is directly proportional. The more quantity you purchase, the more the cost goes down, right? Or inversely proportional, as I may say. So that's what we focus on. So now when we try to calculate demand and supply, so now we try to have a good match. So we try to drive as much traffic or more leads as possible, forecast what the demand would be, and then place a bulk order to reduce our costs. So that's how we go about calculating. these metrics.
So, what drew this or what added on to this learning curve? Were there certain books or certain mentors that contributed to this learning curve or your way of approaching finance part of your startup?
Yeah, I think being frugal, as even Jeff Bezos rightly says, right? When he was also, let's say, at a sizable scale, he has the concept or the policy of having tables which are made out of doors, right? That's a simple concept. So it shows how frugality helps, right? And as I stress again, unless you have enough capital or resources backing you, you're on your own, right? So you have to be frugal. You have to see how you can figure it out and grow, right? So yeah, that's how our mindset and learning has been. Be frugal, grow sustainably, and once you hit your perfect PMF, then from there, if you have to burn, if to reach scale, I am for capital, but once you find your PMF and you want to scale, then you obviously have to burn for the next 2-3 years to reach a sizable growth and reach that market share. But yeah, till then, stay frugal, figure it out, crack your PMF, see if this scalability. And obviously, as my previous CEO always says, Girish Madhurvardhan, I look up to him so much. He has this policy of nail it and scale it. So focus on a specific region, focus on a specific geography, see if you can nail it there, and then expand from there.
Do you have a particular advice for the first-time founders who are trying to figure out their product market fit and how do they go about it?
I can guarantee you, whether it's the biggest of the biggest giants in the startup game or successful ventures right now, it's rarely their first idea that has made it big, right? You'll have countless failures. Like I can quote many examples. One of them was, I think, just to survive, Airbnb founders had to sell cereal boxes, right? They had to get what they had to make. They made $50,000 of that, and that bootstrapped them. There's another famous example of Frederick Wallace Smith, the founder of FedEx, where he was down to his last $10,000, $20,000, and he just took a risk and went to Vegas and went to a casino to bet it all, and that doubled his money. Right. So, yeah, I think that's how it works.
Build demand before you build product. I think that's the simplest way to put it. Like, you have to see if whatever you're building has enough of a demand. And then you figure out the product, figure out the specifics of it.
Don't go for perfection. It's all about speed. And I think they always mock me. They call me Mr. Speed. Like, speed. That's because you need to have the urgency. Because if it's not working, you have to pivot. You have to iterate, right? So speed is the way to go. Like, you have to iterate maybe countless times. If you think about it, I've had 12 businesses already, right? And I'm nowhere close to a PMF, to be honest, right? But it's that passion, it's that interest, and I feel it's all a game. So yeah, just keep iterating, try to find it, and you'll strike gold at some point.
So to summarize, it's growth over perfection and scaling over product market fit, if I get it right.
It's growth over perfection, obviously, but product market fit
over scaling.
Yes. Yeah.
Now that Flekt is growing and the industry itself is also quite growing, where do you see Flekt in this rapidly evolving industry?
Our end goal is to be synonymous with the salon industry. That's the simplest way I can put it. Like, you think salons, you think barbershops, our logo has to be there. That's our end goal. So it doesn't matter what product, what hardware, what software we tie it down to, or what service we're providing. So long as there is the logo present of Flekt in a salon or in any grooming environment, I think we've made it. I think that's what I see.
A one-stop solution for salon, because there's countless gaps, right? And I think how Zomato and Swiggy are pioneering, because they just don't cater to food delivery, right? They have a division called Hyperpure, and now they're starting lifestyle, right? So different segments that you can cater to within a niche. And we feel that Flekt could be appropriate. Once we gain the trust and the reputation from the salon owner, then it becomes easy for us to, support them on multiple other aspects, right? From employment, procurement. And I can highlight the 4 parameters that all salons have a problem with. Number 1 is employment. Number 2 is procurement. Number 3 is marketing. And number 4 is revenue. And right now we're focusing on revenue, but we're eventually going to help the other 3 factors for the segment as well.
Now, digging deeper into the beauty and the salon industry, right? How do you foresee business models in beauty and salon industry? Do you think it's on-demand services or subscription model, or is it a hybrid model? Or what are the innovations that are coming about in terms of revenue and in terms of business model in this industry?
I think as far as industry is concerned, like with every other industry, there's a slow adaptation. Like, people are still not trying to figure out new models of how to, commercialize their service. So far, it's like a direct sale that's worked. Even when we pitch a service, a subscription model, there's a little bit of a resistance. But when they realize, okay, there's a lot more services that come alongside having a rental-based product, then they're open to it. But I think it's a matter of figuring it out and piecing it together as you go. And so far, I would say subscriptions look to be the way forward because it makes things a lot more affordable. And it's almost like a continued service as opposed to I sell you a product and now it's yours to deal with. Instead, you're giving away a product and you're constantly supporting it as well.
I strongly feel also it's going to definitely be a hybrid model, right? It's not going to be one versus the other. It's always going to be a hybrid model, because it's an evergreen industry, right? And if you think about it, everyone's seeking experience now, especially the post-COVID period. Everyone seeks experiences right now, as you may have seen, right? Everyone wants to go for the Coldplay concert or Ed Sheeran, and you see a lot of artists coming down as well. So what are we all looking for? We're looking at seeking experience wherever we go. And if you think about it, a salon is a space where I spend close to 30 to 45 minutes just staring at the mirror on my phone, right? So how can I enhance that customer experience? Now, whether it's through tech, whether it's through helping stylists enhance the experience, or whether it's certain SOPs in the barbershop, there are countless avenues. So that's the journey that we are looking at to enhance that experience.
So is Flekt on this particular journey of incorporating tech into this?
Absolutely. We have a lot of features which are being set to roll out in the next 60 days. So if you do capture Flekt in one of the closest salons, do tag us or give us a shout out, and hopefully we'll give you a voucher.
Sure. That would be great.
Right.
So what's a decision you made in Flekt that seemed quite small when you made it, but had a huge impact later in business?
Being the founder, especially, first time founder, a first generation entrepreneur, right? There are a lot of hard decisions that you have to make, right? Again, as I highlighted earlier, and obviously to touch the emotional aspect of every entrepreneur who goes through this journey. I was right out of college, right? All dreams, all ambitions, pure hustle, hard work, all of that, right? Countless sleepless nights, and still not reaching anywhere. Again, you start comparison. And one thing I'd like to highlight to everyone, right? Comparison is the thief of joy, right? You have to, pursue what you love, but also be sensible and not burden others as well, right? So for me, obviously, coming from a humble background, right? I didn't have much runway or resources to survive, right? For me, even having 3 meals a day or even paying off the rent was the challenge, right? So being a founder, if you look at Maslow's law of hierarchy, right, your basic needs have to be met. But if you look at self-realization from day one, how are you going to live, right? So that was a decision that I had to take, right? I need to have funds. I need to not rely on my parents or anyone who, as a matter of fact, to kind of survive, right? Because I'm starting afresh. So I obviously had to work for a while. I had to pursue, the corporate stint. But I was absolutely certain that after my first stint that I want to pursue entrepreneurship again. But I have to start saving up so that I can have a runway and not be dependent on anyone, right? So I think while I balanced the job and still had this one, I think the biggest decision that impacted the whole journey of Flekt was after 2 years, 3 years, you get very cushioned or you get very comfortable, right? I think in the 3 years stint, I kept jumping in terms of my promotional hierarchy, and I was getting paid well as well. So I'm like, hey, wow, this is fun, right? But if you get too cushioned, you're never going to pursue your dreams, right? So I had to take that decision of, now it's time. I have enough to kind of survive for the next 12 months or 18 months. I took that leap of faith, and I think that made a huge impact. That's what made Flekt where we are right now. And you'll have to take such hard decisions along the way. You can't have the both, best of both worlds. So you obviously have to take that leap of faith and pursue what you love.
It's always the leap of faith, yeah?
True.
Adding a little technical aspect to it. So when it comes to building a marketplace, and given that the journey was never easy and you're venturing out into a new industry altogether, so what was those sort of decisions in that aspect of it on what seemed small but had a huge impact and taught you the most insights or learnings?
So I think, one thing is people will say that, you obviously have to focus on a certain thing, but then till you identified PMF, how do you survive as a company? How do you stay consistent, right? So we actually had to spread out. We actually have 2 other engines that are actually fueling our growth. We are completely bootstrap company as of now, right? So we did digress a bit, but I think that capital that we're able to source from other engines that we're running right now is helping us fuel the dream or ambition that we have. So I think the decision of focusing on one thing, but at the same time making sure you're self-sustaining through other engines, I think that's definitely a big decision or insight that has helped us continue to grow where we are.
So why being bootstrapped? What motivates you to stay bootstrapped?
Ideally, see, there are 2 ways of it. One is this is a very niche or a very early segment. So I'm not sure VCs are also convinced about the potential of the market, right? And there's no big name in India, at least apart from these giants that we know, right, like the Tony and Guy, the Enrich and the Verves and all, right, the biggest company that we're aware, or a $1 billion unicorn, is operating in the US. So I feel VCs are still not convinced of the market potential. So that is obviously one factor. And second is, I think decision making is easier. Now it's just us arguing. Tomorrow, if there's a VC on board or there's someone else who's infused capital, they'll want us to take decisions based on their inputs, right? Then probably we'll just have to be puppets. We'll have to be what they ask us to do. And obviously, they want their returns. That's the aim of the game, right? So I think once we reach a certain scale, we will obviously want to infuse capital and see how we can scale. But till then, I think being bootstrapped, being able to be flexible and not choked to the point that you have to return it. You don't have that pressure every day. Every day is a good morning. There's no immense pressure, but how do I scale? How do I reach the next level? 0 to 1 has been achieved. Now, how do I reach 1 to 10, 10 to 100 is the next journey that we're on.
So what are the key takeaways of solopreneurs or the people who are starting out for the first time that they could learn from your experience of being a bootstrap starter for this particular time period?
Find the right people and delegate early. Keep yourself ahead of the current problems. Like figure out the solutions and delegate the responsibility so that you're always 3, 4, 4 steps ahead. If you can proactively solve a problem, that's a lot of time saved. And in the meantime, your company is functioning. And also like just invest in people. Right? From day one, through the pivots, through everything, what we've really done and really done well is the fact that we invested into our people. And once they've bought into your idea and your ambition, and they're there for life. Like through thick and thin, I know for a fact whatever 10-member team that we've got on board, they're good solid. They're going to keep going with us.
I think we've been blessed with a splendid team, right?
And very early too.
Very early. So I think that itself, because right now when we need more resources, right, it's just a matter of telling them and they bring in. So that's how the engine should work. And from all the theory that we've observed over the years, we know that when the best of the best in your team starts attracting talent, that's how you want the company to grow. And I think a simple philosophy that we want to touch upon as well is when Bezos says, right? So I keep quoting, all these big founders because we look up to them. We obviously want to, right? Founders, at least at the early stage, right? We have to be in the present and the future, right? But what Bezos' philosophy is, when you reach a certain stage, right? The founders have to be 2-3 years ahead. Right? I think there's a very famous reel as well when he says that people come to him and congratulate him on this quarter. He's like, that quarter was prepared 3 years ago. I planned it three years back, right? So that's how futures have to think. Founders have to think. We have to think ahead. So right now at this stage, we are both in the present and the future, right? But as we grow, as we have the right team members to delegate the present, what we're going to be focusing is on the future. How do we evolve the industry? How do we expand? How do we go international? And I think juggling that is where we are stuck. Not stuck, but learning that, juggling the future and the present.
Is either that you got like really lucky with your team, or you have a secret sauce to building the correct team members and have that as a great foundation? So is there a secret sauce? If there is, spill it out for us.
So my previous stint has been in personal consultation as well. So I can sort of identify if someone's sold on something or if they're willing to continue with this ambition. I look for ambitious people. I like people with skin in the game. I like people that may seem meek and very tired now, but the second they get their engine rolling, they'll like energize themselves. It'll come from within. I've been there myself. When it's a task or an activity that I don't particularly enjoy, I know I'll lag down on it. But the second you identify what drives a person, I think that is a...
And I also think, I'm not sure if it reflects, right? But the energy and passion that you show or you showcase to the world, right? People absorb it, right? And I feel strongly that, my passion is reflected. Like I enjoy the space and I see a massive opportunity. Every time I go to a salon, I'm like, hey, and I keep experimenting. Just yesterday, I went to a barbershop to see how the experience was. I see countless gaps, right? So I think that passion should reflect. And I think once anyone absorbs that energy or they understand that, hey, this founder has a mission and he's not going to give up until he's got it, then I think, it's a piece of cake from there. You're going to attract the right talent.
When things didn't go as planned, how did you go about it? How did you deal with the self-doubt? And did you have like a personal mental model or a framework in place to like deal with all these self-doubt and when things go haywire?
I think this quite it comes naturally to me. Like I tend to dissociate. So a lot of the negative emotionality behind a failure or a pivot or whatever it may be, it's like setbacks in general. When emotions are not the driving force behind the decisions you're making tomorrow, it makes things a lot easier. you take a third person's perspective to approaching something. So, it's worked well for me so far. A lot of people might think it's not exactly the healthiest way to go about it. You might want to process your setbacks. But from a very business, logical, rational standpoint, I think it makes absolute sense to just dissociate from the emotionality of the problem and dive right into solving it.
And I think one framework I'd like to add over here is it's not exactly a framework, but it's a thought or exercise that you can ask yourself, right? And that is, so I've asked this question to myself countless times, like, why am I doing? So as founders, you have countless thoughts about, you have the imposter syndrome and all of that. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? Are we faking it till we make it? And all of that mumbo jumbo, right? But the question is, ask yourself, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do on a day-to-day basis, right? I think even the Loom founder is going through that. If he has all the money in the world, right? But what would you do on a day-to-day basis? I've asked this question to myself countless times. And I think if you ask me this, I'd still continue what I continue to do. Like, I want to drive innovation in the salon space, in the grooming space, right? Even if I had all the support and resources, this is what I want to do on a day-to-day basis. I look forward to, digitizing the industry or creating innovation in the sector. So I think it's an important exercise to ask yourself, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? And if that gives you an answer, that's what you have to do.
So how did you go about like picking this problem statement that, hey, I want to be solving this? Because personally, I find multiple problem statements on a day-to-day basis. I'm somebody who takes note of all these things. And I want to like, oh, why not solve this? Why not go into climate tech? And there's so many different aspects to this. So how do you, go in on one particular problem statement and, hey, this is something worth dedicating my years of work into?
Absolutely. So first thing you have to understand, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? So you have to kind of understand which sector you want to be playing in, right? So I think from very early on, we were very keen about grooming, community and all of that. So we kind of filtered down on step one, which industry are you in, right? Now, step two is, what do we build? What was the problem that we're solving? What is the pain point that we're solving? So for that, you have to validate with market service, right? So step out on the field, right? I think that is one very important piece of advice that we got from a lot of mentors and professors, especially from our IIMB, who told us that, hey, rather than just assuming and ideating and just drawing charts on the board, go out in the field. Like, Bangalore is a place where you can validate anything. Just stick a poster, put a QR code, just get out in the market and test it, right? So we idly went, we spoke to 200, 300 owners. And what we noticed was a set of common problems, right? And we ranked them from 1 to 4. And then based on our skill set, we thought, hey, how can we solve this, right? And as I highlighted before, right, employment was the biggest pain point. But do we have the skill set to complement that? At this point, no. Because we don't know vernacular languages. We don't know their language yet, right? So what else can we help them in? So we took problem number 3, which was highly ranked in that order, to solve for, right? Now we can, obviously, once we know all the problems, then we know how to elevate around it, right? So that's how we went about it.
I think that's quite an interesting way to go about. Although it's very intuitive, I think a lot of people forget to take that step into ranking and prioritizing which one would be a good fit to put your problem into. So there's this myth, right? People say find the problem and then make a solution for it. But most of the times you have a solution and then you go about the problem.
Right.
In your case, you had a solution first in terms of your project and this one was it. But then in most of the people, they have a problem and then they go about dabbling into a different solution and then seeing what works best.
Correct.
So what do you think is the ideal way or a good to go way of going about it?
See, the ideal way, at least in my perspective, is obviously find a pain point or a problem and then find a solution for it, right? But as innovators or product enthusiasts, you try to always create a solution and then try to push it onto the consumers, which I doubt is not going to work. Maybe there's 1 in a million probability, like the Henry Fords. He's like, if he had listened to the consumer, people would still be on bullock carts or horses, right? So it's about, if you're that visionary of a leader like a Henry Ford or a Steve Jobs, he was very certain that, hey, such devices will revolutionize the industry, right? So if you're very confident in what you think or what you're visualizing, you don't need that market validation. You're innovating, right? But 99% of the time, 98% of the time, listen to what the market wants. You should have experienced that pain point and then you can solve it easily.
Well, so how do you balance that customer feedback versus your original vision for the problem or the original vision for your startup? So how do you balance into taking this cycle and going about it?
That's always, it's a repetitive cycle. It's create a hypothesis, validate with the market, and try to commercialize it. Keep iterating that cycle, right? Always try to iterate on what your hypothesis. You'll have a hypothesis, validate it in the market, and then see if it's commercially viable. Repeat that cycle till you hit PMF. That is the simple model of framework.
So for Flekt, do you have a number the number of iterations that you went through to come
Yeah,
about?
we target 100 no's. On 100 no's. So that way we'll have to knock on 300 doors. Right? And that's what we target. So we have this very weird relationship with rejection where we want our 100 no's, right, in a given month or a given timeline. That's usually how we go about it.
That's some great resilience to have as founders. I think that's some skill that everybody should pick up, and to having not just having a vision, but having that resilience to go about going through all the ups and downs of navigating through a startup life. So how did you build that resilience? I mean, like you said, you had it in you, but did you have any particular skill set that had contributed to having certain resilience, or is it something that you just go about and gain it over time?
So me personally, like I mentioned before, right, dissociation. The problem is not me or like what I have to deal with. It's an entirely different being, right? So I do not mind being shameless enough to ask anybody for help. And that kind of ego dilution really helps a founder actually dive down into solving a problem. Like if you feel like, oh, I can't do this or my solution is not working, then you're the problem. Instead, dissociate from the problem. Like attack it together with your co-founder, with your partners, with your employees, whoever it is. Ask people and speak to enough people, and you'll arrive at the solution. It's a 100% thing.
I think it's also a mindset that evolves with experience, right? The first time you do a startup, again, I think Safal mentioned earlier, right? You're going to expect everything to go as planned. We've had certain projects where we had plan A to Z mapped out. And then from nowhere came double A plan. Like we didn't know what to do, right? So you should have that resilience to just face rejections, right? Do not be harmed by it. Like it's expected in the startup world, in the entrepreneurial journey. The only thing that you can guarantee is a rejection, right? Yeah. So be ready for it, right? And then it's about the mindset. Your mindset will evolve. Now, when we go for a thing, we know that hey, there are two outcomes. Either it's going to be a yes or it's going to be a no. If it's a no, fine. What can I do better to hit at it again? If it's a yes, well and good. And I think as I keep quoting a lot of founders. I don't know how this is even there in my head, but I think as Kunal Shah always says, right? Entrepreneurs are people who keep hitting a wall. They fall down, they get back up again, and hit the wall again. Right? It's a cycle that you keep because you're confident that you can push those boundaries. So be ready for rejections. Be ready for things going exactly opposite the way you envisioned, and you'll figure it out along the way.
So how long do you think before you can stop hitting the wall? Because now when you know that this is the time you need to stop, because there's a lot of time you can keep iterating and pivoting from your idea, and there's one point where you need to like really stop and be like, hey, there's something not working out, it's okay. So there's a very thin line, right, that differentiates between both. So you being already having a first time founder experience, and this is your second startup, so how did you, like, what's the difference there? What's the thin line that you're working on?
So the first thing is, can I monetize whatever I'm doing, right? Whether it's a skincare brand, whatever it is, right? And second is, how fast is it? Is there a word of mouth? Now, if there's word of mouth, that's definitely going to accelerate your growth, right? So one thing that we aim for is, right, okay, can I monetize? Step one, monetize. Step two, keep a minimum target. Let's say 10 customers in this month or 20 customers in this month. When we are experimenting the barbershop model, right? We have a target of, onboarding 5 barbershops in HSR and achieving, let's say, 100 customers in the next 90 days, right? These are small targets to have. And once you've achieved it, then you know that, okay, there is a market for this. Then it's just about replicating and optimizing funds, resources, and all of that. So take the most minimal geography or project experimentation with the most minimum resources, as people coin it as MVP. See if you can validate it, and then go about scaling it. So that's how all our experiments go. We have countless ideas. Like every day we wake up with 10 different ideas, right? But what we do to test it is we move fast. We test it in, let's say we give ourselves 30 days, see if it's working with the targets that we have, whether it's 5 or 10 or 1 or 2. Are people willing to pay? If I get my first customer, step 1 is achieved. Step 2 is, can I go to another 5 salons with this? And if that is, then you know that you can infuse capital to just replicate it.
I think a memorable way to put this across is that let's say you stick into the analogy of hitting a wall, right? Mm-hmm. If you hit the wall head first the first time, go fist first the next time. Like keep trying new iterations. Don't head first dive into it again and again. That's insanity. You want to keep reiterating your solution and then hit the same wall. At some point, it'll fall down.
Now, speaking of demographics, right, there's something that hit me over the nail. Like, hey, a product for all is a product for none. Do you think that is true? If you believe in it, how did you pick a niche, or how is the whole scene about that?
I believe in the concept of having a super niche. Like you may have just 50 people that believe in it, but if it's strong enough, if it's relatable enough, more and more people be drawn to that super niche. They will become your customer at some point or the other. Right now with the barbershop model also, we're developing something that's very super niche. Like not a lot of people go towards, let's say, grooming 4 times a week or unlimited beer trims. But once you form a community surrounding it, people have this idea of mimicking what other people buy and what brand they're associated with. All these things come together and you ultimately broaden your niche as time.
And obviously, there's a lot of challenges that come along with it as well. See, now here, I think a simple framework that we can observe is the AIDA model. Now, whether it's any other industry, right? There's always already awareness, interest, and education, right? It's just about decision, whether it's D2C or any other industry you look at. But in the salon space, even the first foundation pillar of awareness is not there. So that's where we have that burden on us or anyone else in the space currently, the competitors or the partners that we have in the space. It's on us to educate the market on what the potential is. Then we have to drive interest. Then we have to see how we can drive decision. And then action comes towards the end of it. So we're still in pillar one, right? We are in the awareness, educating the market. And that too just in a geography of HSR, right? How can we replicate it across the metro cities, across tier 2 cities? That's the journey for the next 5-10 years that we're looking at.
So speaking about community building, right? Is that something that happened, something that you tapped into that was existing, or did you have a strategy to build that community around having Flekt? So how successful are you in building a community for Flekt, and what strategies did you have for it?
So we have multiple engines currently running, right? For the tool side of the equation where we're giving these devices, it's completely B2B. So one, there's no sense of community as such, but one thing that we did from day one is really listen to what problems they have, right? It's not about using the tool. It's about how you position the tool and how they're using it. In the sense that instead of saying, okay, you can see this, using this device, you can see in 1000x zoom, or this tablet can show you such and such features. Don't talk about it. Talk about what problems you're solving for your customer. This is how you go about training the people in order to use the tool. As on the barbershop segment, the community comes organically, right? You build into someone's ritual. You're talking about someone's persona, right? And you're helping shape that. If that is the element that you're chasing, then eventually the community builds itself around it. And then after that, it just grows organically. There's no structure to it.
I think there's a recent video by a famous influencer called Varun Maya, right? And he quoted that, hey, everyone wants to be part of something. They're all part of a greater purpose or a greater need, right? So now, let's say, why is Ferrari, they're a sought out club, right? Can we have a similar community, like a community where people get to be part of something bigger, right? A community of maybe men or people who are fond of grooming. Just come together and talk about how do you maintain a healthy lifestyle? How do you look good, right? So we create a club around it, have a purpose, have events hosted around it, have workshops around it, maybe plug in even mental work in health workshops on how do you face day-to-day challenges as a modern man or a metro man, right? So these are things that we're dabbling upon, right? These are all experiments we want to try out. But again, the foundation is step 1, have supply, that is salons. Step 2, have demand, that is customers. Step 3 is engage. So these are 3 steps we're looking to grow into.
So do you think building a community is like a very successful way of brand awareness? Is that something that you agree with?
As far as brand awareness is concerned, like he rightfully mentioned, right? Mimetic desires is one aspect of it. People want to be associated with brands that they feel like represents themselves better. Mm-hmm. The second a customer sees themselves within any given brand, that's when they make a purchase. It's not for the product, not for the service. Sure, those play a huge role, obviously. But secondary aspects of it is ultimately how much of this person is captured within your brand, which is why it's so important to build your super niche. Make it a person, essentially, right? Make it an organism as opposed to an organization. It's something that I live by in the sense that any brand, if the second they start using your products and they're sort of speaking for it and they identify with the brand, that's a strong customer base right there. And the community just builds itself around it. Now I'm looking at my friend who has this purchase, like he mentioned, like Ferrari, right? Why do I want the Ferrari? There are other brands and other companies that create like similar products or better designs even. So the only reason is, okay, if you purchase a Ferrari, you're after this club. If you purchase a Flekt subscription, you're after the Flekt subscription and the people around it.
So it's always best to have 10 customers love you rather than 100 customers like you, right? Because those 10 customers who love you, they're going to have a very strong customer advocacy. right? And that's what's going to help this one. So very simple analogy that maybe that we go through on a daily basis, right? As in, there's a recent product from Blinkit that I just love. I enjoy consuming. It's Nova Nova, right? The waffle cup. And I tell everyone who I meet, hey, have you had Nova? It's not like I'm the brand ambassador or anything, but I just love the brand so much that I tell them, have you tried Nova Nova? It's very tasty, right? So I'm probably pitching them. You should consider me as the ambassador. But I pitch it. So once you love the product, right, it naturally comes to you and you start flaunting it. It's a psychology. It's a customer psychology that, hey, when you start loving something, you try to impose it on your close circle. That's why you share things on Instagram, right? There's a whole psychology behind it. So when you love something, you start telling it to everyone in your immediate circle. So let's say this is what is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. You'll have 5 people that you love. I have 5 people that I love. You'll have 5 people that I love. So 3 will translate into 15. And 15 will then translate into 45. That's how it multiplies, and there's a network effect after that.
Now I have a question, right? You're serving both the sectors, both the premium and the barber, like the barber community, unorganized sector. So how are you positioning Flekt? And I'm very confused on how can it serve both. If it's Flekt is to be positioned as one particular or associated with one particular lifestyle status, then how are you going to serve both the sides of both premium and the unorganized sector part?
That's a very good question. So with the premium segment, what we're trying to create is the sense of credibility. If we can serve this segment of salons and they're paying for our service, there's a certain identity that's associated with the brand already. The second you trickle that down and put it into an unorganized sector, suddenly it feels slightly more organized. So that's why we went this route instead of building from the ground up, which is ideal way to go. But yeah, so far this works for us, the best case, because again, it's trickle down. We create the identity of having something more organized, more premium, and then bring it down towards the unorganized sector.
So again, as it goes back to what we started off initially with, right? We want to kind of make sure that Flekt is the one-stop solution. Like Flekt is there in all segments of a salon or a grooming industry, right? So obviously there are different problem statements and we are tackling it ourselves. But right now, how we are kind of branding ourselves is Flekt caters tech and experiences to premium segment, and Flekt caters experience and obviously aggregation or standardization to the barbershop segments. And we call that segment called barbershops, right? So we are learning along the way how to kind of position ourselves, but we are obviously juggling between 2 major giants. So as we optimize and grow, how do we evolve these 2 engines is what we are also figuring out. But that also shows the opportunity. We are actually excited for more people to come because there's a whole opportunity ahead of us and there's no one playing in it. We know a handful of startups in this segment, right? We are inviting more people, please come so that more people are educated about the space, right? Grooming is a golden opportunity. It's a blue ocean that is waiting to be disrupted, and being an early startup, we can foresee the future. I'm not sure what the future beholds.
It's interesting how you want more competitors than like have less of it, right? I mean, do you want to
competition is always great. I think that was
it shows that there's potential. One, and the more you compete within a given environment, the more solutions can be shared across the table, right? Even the largest giants are sharing their own, they're condensing what their best product is and sharing that with each other, right? Or there'll be copycats anyway, right? So competition is inevitable, but when there is, it shows that this market is a healthy environment to be growing in. And it's enough. There's a big cake for everybody.
Monopoly is not what's people looking for. Duopoly, or when there's more players, that's when it gets exciting. So, the minute we know that someone's starting to copy us, then we know that the segment is growing. So we just recently discovered a startup who's in the similar space, and we're like, okay, now people are starting to take notice, and that's really motivating for us too. Like, we want more players to be in the space.
So given that you have certain number of players growing in your industry, how do you best position yourself so that you're having the upper hand in the market?
So I think what everyone's focusing on is driving traffic, that is being a marketplace in terms of awareness. What we are rather focusing on is experience. That is, there are 2 ways that this salon industry has a lot of competition. One is software like a CRM or booking appointments and all of that, or a marketplace which book appointments. They're like, hey, you're already there. Like, there's so many of them. We don't want to create a competitor for that. What we are rather focusing on is experience, right? What we are focusing on is now this engine kind of focuses on driving traffic. We don't focus on driving traffic. We're looking at how to retain traffic and help increase revenue for existing owners. So we have countless salons who have made 1 lakh a month using our tool, right? And we charge them a basic subscription fee of 3,000, 4,000, right? So that's what 300, 400% returns on this one, right? So that's what we focus on.
Yeah. Just to add on to that point, right? The reason as to why this approach has worked so far for us is they do not want to be billing multiple entities at the same time. The second we showcase results on one particular aspect, if at all Flekt diversifies and builds something else, the trust is already there, credibility is already there. They'll come to us again, right? So we really want to listen to our customers and make sure that our product has showcased the right kind of results that they're after.
And that's a very good insight as well, because what salons are looking at, whether it's from the giants or the small salon owners, right? All of them are looking for that one-stop solution. They don't want to have countless partners, one person to buy software, one person for employment, one person. They're tired of it, right? Owners want to go to one person, and that's what we're seeing day in, day out. We even spoke to our friends in the industry, right? And they're also observing the same, because we give a solution to them. They're coming back to us on a totally different aspect. They're like, hey, can you also help us in driving marketing? Oh, can you also help us in getting a manager? So once we have that trust, we know that, hey, they'll come back to us for more. And so getting the credibility, getting that trust from the owner is step one. And then from there, I think we can diversify into anything.
Now, speaking of listening to customers, right? What is one thing that you've learned about your consumer psychology or consumers or customers in your particular segment that completely threw you off charts? Like, hey, I was not expecting that coming up. Is that something that that happened, that really surprised you? And what insights did you particularly pick up from it?
I think we briefly touched upon this before, but it has to do with usability.
Okay.
And teachability of whatever innovation that you're bringing in. At the end of the day, the stylist is your user. He's your customer. Owners may be mind blown about the fact that you're introducing so much tech. They're sold on it. But if the stylist does not use it, they're not going to see results. And the second they don't see results, they're going to, they're not going to be customers any longer. I think the listening also, you have to add one more point to it. Listen to the right people, right? So who is going to be using your device? Who's going to be using your CRM software, whatever it is? Make sure that you're listening to the end user. That's pretty much it.
In your experience of pitching Flekt and conversing with the early adopters, right? What is the conversion rate that looks like in terms of how many people were interested versus how many people were actually buying then using the product?
At least for the first 50 consumers, as founders, when we went out, I kid you not, there was absolutely 100% conversion ratio. Yeah. Every person or every owner that we spoke to wanted it. And that was extremely motivating, right? But now, since we are at a more, scalable level right now, we have to delegate this resource. So probably, I'm not sure if it's because of the passion that oozes out from us or it's the convincing that we do, but all the owners wanted it, right? And that was really motivating for us. But now when we have more staff on field or more soldiers on foot, the conversion ratio is now ideally 40-50%. That is, every 10 customers they meet, they convert 4 to 5 people, right? Probably there's a lot of training that has to be done from our side as well. Like, how do you pitch better? How do you convince better? But there's easily a 40-50% conversion of the 10 customers that we pitch to.
So that's more of a sales aspect into it.
Yes.
So people, how convincing they are in terms of selling. So that is majorly driving the conversion rate. And it's not about the adaptability of the tech in it.
So I've had pitches as low as 2 minutes. Because one is we go to them citing a credible source, saying that, hey, we came on behalf of so-and-so partner, because they already distribute products to them. And the minute the owner sees the functionality, they're like, okay, I want it. And I'm like, so you can do this. Here, yeah, I understood. Go for it. Okay, so that motivates us. So we know there's a need for it. But again, at the end of the day, there's a lot of education and awareness that we have to train the stylists. Because as we keep repeating, right, owners may love it, but is it going to be used by stylists? It's the fundamental question.
So there was more acceptance, or was there more initial hesitation in terms of adapting to tech from the stylist or the artist point of view?
Yeah, there was a lot of resistance because they didn't know what is the benefit. They're like, hey, well, everyone is in a state of motion, right? And that's the law of nature as well, right? When there's no external force acting on you, right? You're in that state of inertia, right? So unless someone drills it into you that, hey, this can actually help you, and once they see the functionality, so one very silly indicator that we know that, hey, this is a successful onboarding salon is the minute we give a training and we do it, we show them the tool. When they start using it on each other, it's a very primate or a primitive this one, right? They try to do it on their friends, and the minute they start placing, hey, arey boy, itna dandruff hai, and they're like, oh wow, okay. So when they start getting excited amongst each other, we know that all right, these guys are going to use it. But when they they don't use it in the first try itself, then you know that, okay, that's probably going to churn in the next 10 days.
And that has to do with our training as well, right? Our training model makes sure that we're giving them a story to guide the customer through. Instead of telling, okay, you can see your dandruff or you can see your blackheads on this, Be like, okay, do you find like itchiness in this zone? Let me check this out for you. And then showcase to it. They're not looking at the tech, they're looking at what's coming next, right? They're more interested in seeing themselves. So it becomes a lot easier, right?
And what helps them reach their target for right now, they have aggressive targets to meet, right? And it's not easy being a stylist. Are you pressurized to perform, or are you pressurized to cut? Are you pressurized to meet your targets, upsell products? Why not make their life easier? This is a simple diagnostic tool. Add an element of free consultation. If anyone rejects, okay, which is ideally 1 or 2 out of 10, say that, hey, I don't want the consultation. Everyone else is open to it because it's free. And the minute they diagnose and they see in real time, and that I can guarantee that 80%, 90% have some sort of issue, right? Which is dandruff, blackhead, whitehead. And then it's just a easy upsell, because we are not upselling problems. We are upselling that, hey, your well-being is at stake. Why don't you start precautionary methods right now? And you'll see the benefits of it down the road.
Now, I think I need to pick your brains on how to sell efficiently. Do you have any tips for like the pitches that you gave and what worked out best? Because I personally know that you are a great person at orating and communications. I can see that in terms of how you go about branding and how you see how you want to position Flekt. So what tips do you have for in terms of pitching?
Sell feelings as opposed to product. Right. The second the customer, like I said, if the customer is able to visualize themselves using the product, your product is sold. What happens most, and I think that's with salespeople also, when we're comparing one or more salespeople, the primary difference I saw between the better performing one and the one that was not doing so great was the fact that the second one was doing really well. He told the stylist that, okay, once a customer sits down, show them this, talk to them about this, and then show the product. Don't show them like the features of, let's say, the dermoscope, or, this has this much clarity. Don't show that. Just tell them, like, guide them through a journey, show them a narrative, and place the customer in that narrative, and your product is sold.
I think that's the drastic difference that we found in our own internal team, right?
Yeah.
We had 2 splendid candidates, right? One was hardworking. Both are definitely hardworking, right? But the difference that we saw was one was able to convert easily. The other wasn't. And we were intrigued. We were baffled. Like, hey, he's going on field. He's going everywhere. He's giving us numbers, but he's not able to close sales. So we actually chimed into one of their conversations, and we understood that, hey, obviously salespeople have their targets. But the former resource was not looking at achieving the targets. He was selling not the features either. He was selling the benefits, that, hey, this is going to help you create X number of this one, and it's going to cover your existing overheads and all of that. The other resource was just pitching features. Hey, this will do this will zoom in there. He was just trying to reach his targets. So that's a drastic difference that we noticed, that, hey, sales has to be an emotion and not just pitching features.
So your sales pitch has to evoke emotions.
Yep, absolutely.
That's the insight that you're getting out of it.
Absolutely.
So were you like previously trained for this, or did you like pick this up on the go?
Not really. No. I've been in sales for like a year, but I didn't quite enjoy it myself. Partially because of the targets involved and whatnot. But I like the fact that conviction and how much you believe that a product will function on you and will be helpful for you, that plays a huge role in being able to sell. So it's not just the narrative alone. You have to believe yourself that this is something that will help you. That way, these were like pointers that you receive from experience. Like, I've pitched a couple of different products, but at the end of the day, the only things that have been sold was myself, right? If they like you and the narrative you spin, the product is sold.
It's the relationship that I think that's everyone asks us, what's your differentiator? Can't anyone else just copy this into the market? I mean, yeah, you can. But our biggest focus point is beyond the hardware or beyond the software that we provide. It's the relationship. We make sure that we have an SOP that checks in on them. Are they actually using the tool? We have more than salespeople, we actually have operations people. And the only reason why we're stressing on that is because we want to make sure that the existing customers engage with it and grow with us, right? We want to avoid churn as much as possible. So we make sure that, hey, they're retained, they're happy with the tool. We try to calculate NPS scores. Are they happy using the tool? What are the results? So there's a lot of schemes that we keep rolling out to make sure that they're motivated to.
And here's a fun fact also. Our operations team, right? They get free haircuts from all these salons.
Wow.
Even I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I don't, but because they're on field and they're engaging with our customers, they're so friendly to the point where he's not charged. And we're talking about like premium range of salons, not like mom and pop stores and anything. It's like premium range salons. He gets a free haircut.
I haven't gotten a discount. That's not fair. But yeah, that's the relationship they have there. And the funny part about this industry is also there's a lot of attrition. So you'll see the same manager in another salon, and when they see the same our Spock, right, like, hey macha, how are you, like that's how they talk to them. So they have that relationship, and then they go, I know why you're here. We'll take it. Like that's how easy it becomes to sell to them.
So I think that's one X factor, right? When it comes to marketplace startups, but you really have to have that strong relationship or that rapport with your customers so that they really trust you with your product and actually give you active feedback, which is actually pretty constructive than just being like, yeah, it was nice, thanks. So how did you crack that down? Although you said, so you as founders are very passionate, right, about your startup. So you were able to pull that off. But how did the rest of your team, who for them, how did they build on those particular skills? Was it your training or is it something that, hey, I have this resource for you, learn from this or something like that?
Training, sure, that would account for maybe 20% of it. But blessing or otherwise, our team from day one has been equally passionate. Like the 10-member team that I spoke of, right? They're all in it full time. They're, they have skin in the game. And that is a blessing, right? So as far as comparisons go, like our passion and theirs would be almost equal in measure. But at the same time, it's what we're contributing essentially direction. Like, I know you've got the energy. And I think that's his contribution towards me also, right? Passion without direction or guidance is just a dream. If you want to have something tangible, something that you can actually feel, sell or, acquire some monetary gains out of, you have to have a direction towards it. And that needs to be structured. That's all we're doing.
And I think to stress upon that passion, right? As in, I think our employee number one, the first time he came to us, he was right out of college, right? And he was a very shy, timid character. And after the interview, like, hey, he barely speaks. How can he go and feel like we were like doubtful. 1 month in, and the confidence that he can, and he was right out of college. He wasn't, very equipped with the language either, right? But he just like 1 year later, he's doing exceptional. And now he comes and argues with us like, hey, why are you doing this? You should be doing this. And that's the energy we love. This is the sort of talent that we need to help us, because they are giving real-time insights from the market, and that helps us shape our direction as well. So I think, once they buy into the vision and their skin is in the game, then you know that they're also going to be equally involved and help scale the company. Then, all, as he rightly said, just give the direction, sell a dream, and reach. I think one very simple. We have yearly targets, right? So last year we, being a very small company, we, again, being bootstrapped, right? We were focusing on a certain target last year, right? We achieved it, and we all took them to Bannerghatta Area T3. Then we last year, after the annual offsite, we're like, hey, next year let's go to Thailand. He set that dream, and Feb 23rd we'll actually go to Thailand, right?
Damn.
Now next year we have another target, right? It's an internal goal that we kept. So keep these goals, keep them motivated, right? And I think once they sell the direction, they know the guidance, I think we're all going to achieve their goals.
So I think that is one make or break part of the company, right? Your vision being shared also by all the people in your team. So when there's a gap, I've always seen that there's always a breaking point where it comes to. So I understand the goal setting and rewarding your team members and treating them right is one part of keeping your startup afloat, and I think even a major part of keeping your startup afloat. But are there other aspects to it that one should look after? Suppose say, hey, I'm going to start a startup in a few years. These are some things, Hira, you have to know so that you know how to manage your team better to keep your startup afloat and running and successful.
So one thing I'd say is don't bite more than you can chew, right? I think from day one, we grew very lean, very lean. It started off 1 person, then it became 2 people, then it became 3 people, 4 people, and it's been over a year, right? So, and now we've scaled to 10 or 12 people, right? And it's again mixed of, full-time and part-time, obviously. And what we focused on from day one is, can I afford this extra resource, right? And if I can't, how do I reach that, right? So right now, at least for the past 2 months, we've been a deficit. Our burn rate has been higher than our our sales, right? So now our next objective, before we even onboard anything or any additional resources, which we're in a desperate lack of, right, to scale, we are clear that, hey, first we reach that objective, make sure we break even again, right? That we can balance our burn rate and our sales, it's the same level. Then I start scaling again, right? And then I reach the next target. So we're growing very sustainably. But again, obviously, if capital is infused, we can scale faster and not worry about expenses. But I think for now, we want to play this route. And once we reach a sizable scale, we'll try to see if it's a perfect time to infuse a lot of capital and just scale rapidly.
Okay, so the major other factor would be to function lean, right? So it's more of going lean.
Play lean, till you know that you have perfect PMF, you have repeatability, and you can identify scalability. Once you know that, hey, it works in this region, this one, and you've accumulated the maximum, then how do I scale it? And once you know that you can scale to multiple geographies, then it's just about raising funds and rapidly acquiring market share.
So, what's one marketing strategy that works surprisingly well for Flekt and one thing that completely flopped?
So from a strictly B2B angle, when we're looking at the tools that we've integrated into salons, one thing that works surprisingly well is gamification of reviews. So salon owners themselves wanted more salon reviews, positive ones. And a lot of people are not really keen on taking out their phones and entering like 5-star and writing down the reviews themselves. So we thought, why not introduce a spinner wheel game or any form of gamification? So essentially they play the game, they're rewarded for it only if they put down a review. And this worked surprisingly well. Like they got like a 30% increase in the number of positive reviews that each salon got. What didn't work was we thought from a B2B angle, maybe like Instagram Reels would be a good way to drive more engagement towards our product. No, not really. Like salon owners are not really sitting on their behinds and scrolling through content to buy a product. So yeah, that was a failure. Instead, referrals and showcasing the demo of the product itself actually worked in our favor.
Even I think participating in event industry conferences and all of that, showcasing. So we were recently part of an event called Cosmoprof, and that actually opened doors or a lot of opportunities for us. So we realized that, hey, we can not just restrict it to the salon industry, but there's a lot of retail brands who want to leverage the tech that we've created. So we see an opportunity there as well.
So, are there specific metrics that you track to optimize user experience?
Yes, so we recently rolled out a subscription plan for men, which essentially get one haircut and unlimited beard trims from any given outlet that's associated with Flekt. Now that's the angle I can approach when talking about like what kind of insights I'm gathering. So we're currently looking at the nitty-gritty details within the website and how a customer is essentially engaging with each little piece of that website. Be it how much time they spent on a given page, are they choosing to read more about the product before they go towards clicking the CTA? And these are like, let's say they spend more than 2 minutes for some reason. Adding one graphic element, did it improve the time or did it improve the CTR? So all these are aspects that we're actually looking at and taking a call upon whether or not do we focus on more content, do we add more pictures, more teachable aspects of it, or do we just, roll straight into the product? Because all of these factors really, matter, especially depending on which niche you're targeting. Males, for instance, typically want to get straight to the product. Like, what do I get? How much do I pay? Simple. But on the other hand, there's a lot of information that needs to go. Before like a female-centric products, for instance, they talk a lot about what all goes into the product. How am I going to use it? How long can I use it for? What benefits do I get? All of these aspects are there. So, it's things that we have to take a call upon and then develop the website and every interactive part depending on how the customer interacts with it.
So, there's two dimensions to this. One is the customer and one is the actual user of your product. So that's two different people, right? So is there a workaround where you're targeting your customers and your users? So is there a difference in marketing strategy and who comes first and how do you go about it?
So for us, a lot of the end user is going to be the stylist. So let's call them stylists and then the customer, the clients themselves. For the client, we're telling them that your stylist is able to service you better because they know more about you now, right? It's more personalized. So any Flekt affiliated salon can cater and give you the right kind of product recommendations or service recommendations because they actually know what's going on, be it on your skin or your scalp conditions. Whereas for the stylists themselves, we're giving them this additional layer of credibility. We're taking away the weight of being a salesman and placing them as artists themselves. So when this weight is shifted, they feel relief. They feel a sense of relief in the idea that, okay, someone's helping me sell this product and I don't have to list out all the specifics of it. Right? To make things easier. That's how the difference comes in.
That was quite an insightful conversation. To add a little more depth to it, right? Let's say you were to start Flekt all over again with just 10,000 rupees or very limited funds. How would you go about it?
So I think from my angle or my perspective, I would ideally say go with a very simple don't spend or don't splurge at 10,000. I don't think that you can create a product. It's never going to happen, right? First step is get out in the market, validate your thesis. Now, whether you have a D2C product or whether you have any innovation that you're looking to this on, right? Create a simple sketch or create a simple website, and that's barely going to cost you anything, right? Go out to the market, find who your ICP is or your target market is, and talk to them. You can start as close as your friends and family. Start as close as your dad and mom. And then maybe spread to your friends, and then go out in the market, find your recipe and talk to them. Ask them how beneficial it is for you. Find out if they're willing to pay for it. Get an LOI, that is a letter of intent. You keep an internal target that, hey, if I get 10 LOIs, then I know I have a product. And then you spend that 10,000 to materialize whatever you're ideating. So yeah, I think that's what I would say in terms of spending that amount.
And Safal, do you think you have from branding or marketing aspect? Do you want to add another dimension to this answer?
I wouldn't spend a penny of the 10,000 because at the end of the day, when you're creating a brand, it has to start from you.
Okay.
If you yourself are talking to enough people and generating whatever it is, content or marketing collateral, if you're the one driving it forward, then the brand in itself is tied to you. You become it, right? So that becomes easier, right? And the 10,000 stays in the bank.
Yeah, I think that's a very strong statement that he made, where a lot of the younger generation also, right? They don't resonate with the brand or the what do you say, the colors or whatever it is. It's the founder's intent, the founder's purpose. And a very great example is Shantanu himself from Bombay Shaving Company. He's the voice, he's the brand, right? He speaks for the brand, right? So once there's founder advocacy, I think people understand why you're doing it, and then there'll be intent to purchase it. So I think personal branding and with the distribution of social media, I think
It's a big deal.
it's a great combination.
And I don't wear the t-shirt solely for the podcast, by the way. This is how I look like day in, day out.
This is what he wears at home.
Yeah.
You have a
I'm
story
the
for it?
same. For the logo itself, or if you look into it, it's actually our initials.
Mhm.
This is a barber's pole.
Uh-huh.
So before barbershops came to be, they used to be called as barber surgeons.
Okay.
They do things like bloodletting and stitching and all of that. So if there's an injury, wounds or whatever, they used to do that too. So to signify there's a medical component or service being done here, they used to have barber poles outside of a barber shop. So we took that and just made it black and white. And if you see here, that's an S and this is a T.
Damn, okay.
Have you heard of a barber's pole before?
No.
No?
I haven't.
Okay.
Quite
so yeah,
surprising.
it's not a lot of people.
Quite commonplace. A barber's pole was a significant element of a
Emblem.
barber shop.
Yeah.
And it's
So we have the doctors have, I think it's called something staff, where there's two snakes around a staff.
Correct, yeah.
Similarly, a barbershop had this barber's pole.
This used to be the symbol for barbershop.
Yeah.
I'm surprising.
Yeah, it's
Don't
not a lot
wear
of
it.
people
Is
that know
that
about it.
because of generation gap?
Possibly, or we just keep digging up stuff about this segment.
Are we that old?
Well,
Right.
now that's quite an interesting story. That's something new I've learned. Well, what's one skill set one student or any entrepreneur who are just starting out to be one, or somebody, an aspiring entrepreneur, what do you think they should start with? Do you have like a checklist? Be like, hey, Hira, this is something 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give me all these list of skill sets that one should possess before they start out on their own venture.
Fundamentally highlight two things.
Mhm.
One is be shameless.
Okay.
That's one thing I think I abide by. That is, everyone's willing to help. You may assume that the other person may be of a different stature, they're not willing to help, their ego will be at play. No, you see someone, whether it's Nikhil Kamath or an Ambani, just have that confidence to reach out. What's the worst that could happen? They'll reject you, or they won't even look at you. They won't bat an eye. But what's the best thing that could happen? Probably you could change the deviation of your business, right? So reach out to whoever it is. There's wonderful platforms like LinkedIn. I think a lot of our connections are through LinkedIn. Like we make people reach out here. There's a lot of organic storytelling there as well. So just be shameless, reach out, ask what you need, and it's definitely going to come to you. And the second one is be persistent. These are the two fundamental skills. I think persistence or consistency is about keep going at it. It's not going to, overnight success is just a dream. It's not going to happen in a day or two. It's very rare cases, right? Usually it takes 5, 10, 20 years for it to kind of materialize into anything. So cross that valley of death, as the startup world usually says, and then you'll probably see the rainbow at the end of it.
For me personally, I think would be people. Like focus on your people and how easy you are to work with. Doesn't matter what kind of skill sets you possess or how much information you come with. If someone finds it difficult to draw that information from you or learn from you for that matter, it's going to be very difficult for you. The journey is going to be a lot more harder unless you know for a fact, like if you can get 5 or more people working towards the same cause, then you have a company, right? You have a product to them.
I think that's a powerful tool. And I think that resonates with what our initial statement is, the EQ and the IQ. So the brains and the heart. So yeah.
Yeah. Before we wrap up this conversation, right, let's do something really fun, a rapid fire round. So 3 questions, you answer it back to back. Yeah.
Right.
So what's your favorite productivity tool? Your most overrated business advice that you've heard? And the last thing you binge watched?
Okay, that's to me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So productivity tool would be coffee, pen, and paper. Simple. And the second question was the most overrated business advice. That I think is to keep your idea to yourself. Instead, go out there, talk to as many people about it. 99% of people will probably have the same idea as you. Only 1% actually executes on it, right? And finally, what the last thing I binge watched was this series on Netflix called The Witcher. Got Henry Cavill in it, and it's a really good show. I'm a nerd, so I game a lot. So when this show came out, I just rewatched the whole thing.
That answers my question. Yes, on to you, Thomas Koshi.
For me, my productivity tool, I think the common culprits are obviously going to be what ChatGPT, Excel, Google Keep. But what I'm going to stress upon is actually sleep.
Okay.
There's a lot of information that you process on a day-to-day basis, and get that ideal amount of sleep. It helps you start up fresh and think effectively. So I think get your sleep that you deserve, and it helps you process. Overrated business advice, I believe, would be look at the TAM. Obviously, you have to look at the market size, but I think as we touched upon last time as well, focus on a niche, right? Every great startup founder focused on a niche, and then you're obviously going to expand into that. So TAM is important, but don't just focus on TAM, right? Also look at the opportunity that you're confident about. And the last one was, I'm a man of podcasts. I watch a lot of podcasts, a lot of founders. That's how I quote all these random things. But I think the last podcast or series that I watched, or enjoy watching is WTF by Nikhil Kamath. A lot of insights, a lot of knowledge, and I think I think his objective of a mini MBA course in these industry-specific podcasts is brilliant. So I binge watch on that a lot.
Yeah, well, that's our reference to the whole podcast in itself as well.
Wonderful.
We're trying to replicate it, but hopefully better.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing so much about Flekt and helping us learn a lot about business, startups, and all these nitty-gritties of nuanced conversations that I won't usually get to see while seeing somebody being a founder, but actually talking to one. So yeah, thank you
so much for being a gracious host.
Yes, you've been a wonderful host.
Thank you. Okay.